I'm working with Prismacolor markers. Like I said, they don't make them anymore, but there are a lot of different brands out there that you can get. So look around out there in the market and find some markers that you like. I suggest that you get something that has a brush tip, and then they always have another tip on the end, which a fine tip of some kind. I'm going to work on this sunset right here. I'm just going to do a little sunset scene with clouds. Obviously, this is grayscale, so I'm just going to work in that fashion. What I do is just try to talk you guys into working and doing this type of stuff. You can see all these sketches back behind me. This is typically what I do before I start painting, is I try to just do some sketches of it. And a lot of times I'll find, that I just maybe don't want to turn it into a painting after all, but basically what happens is I develop a little bit better of a composition. So here we go. I'm just going to do this very quickly. Now there's the sunset, and basically it is desert. Obviously, you see a few saguaros there. I am going to basically just use my grayscale on this and try and cover it up pretty quickly. And I'm going to have to lower it just a hair. So let me make sure I have you guys up there okay where you can see. I actually start with the dark. Now you guys are going to see I have a little bit of a pencil sketch in there only for the purpose of speeding this up. So I do not have to try to hurry and figure out my composition when I only am working here quickly through this time frame. I'm trying to get that pretty good for you guys so you can see both the picture and the drawing. So typically when I start my sketches, I will do them like my mind thinks when I'm painting. So I like to go to a dark to start. So I'm going to grab the 80% marker here. I could start with black, but I'm going to wait and be a little bit more conservative just to start, because I can always put the black in later. There's no going back with markers. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to suggest these dark trees. And you can do as much detail or as little detail as you want on your thumbnails, right? Pick it, just pick what you like. I just really enjoy doing these. So I may put a little bit more detail sometimes. Sometimes I just do big shapes to get an idea, of what it is that I'm working on. And like I said, this is an 80%, so I'm just going to block in some of these. Now these trees here, there are some trees that I've blocked in further away. Maybe I'll do them just a little bit lighter. I like to give myself just some line work through my foreground. Do I usually start with a pencil sketch? Yes, I do, unless I'm out on plein air. Once in a while I can peek at these questions. If I don't answer your question, I'll try to get back to the questions before we leave. So plein air, I don't do a pencil sketch. In the studio, when I got my own time frame, I do a pencil sketch. So, it's just sort of where am I and what's my schedule? How is all of that looking to me? Now, this is really dark. Could I just do the whole thing really dark? I could. I could just block this whole thing in. I'm just not 100% sure that I want it all that dark, so I'm just sneaking up on this. And there's just, a little path or whatever. I'm leaving that open so it's a little bit lighter. So there's another set of trees, and maybe I'll just go down a value to my 60%. I'm working in the brush tip. This is the brush tip. There is another tip here that is a more finer tip. So I'm going to do these just a little bit lighter. Now these are darker until they dry. Then they will usually dry a little bit lighter than when you put them on. Now when I do clouds, I do conservative. I do start conservative. All right. I think that looks a little busy. I'm going to come back with my 80%. I'm going to simplify this here. I'm going to darken all of this right here. When I step back, it helps. So I'm just going all dark. I'm going to simplify that. If I want that front bush to pop some, then I can pick up a black here. You know, if I want a few little darker accents, I can go with black because, again, that's going to lighten just a little bit. So simplification is usually the best route. So what I was saying is when I block in clouds, I will typically go with a little bit more conservative with this ink because remember, there is no going back. So I just have these little floating clouds here, and I will typically give myself the outline. And again, let's say I'm doing this because it's going to be a finished painting. I will use pencil and get myself, you know, an idea. And typically, I can usually do several of these. I might change the composition of the clouds, just a little breakaway clouds. There are some floating there. These actually, I'm going to attach that one. But lots of times I will do maybe 2 or 3 different thumbnails to give me an idea like, what do I want to do composition wise? Maybe I want a pathway, maybe I don't. Maybe it's just a field with some fence post or, you know, different things. Or maybe I want a totally different cloud pattern. This is all 40% that I'm using. Just coming in, yeah, you see like highlights and all that, but I'm not worried about those. I really am looking at this as a big picture and big shapes. And how do I like the cloud pattern? Do I like the composition? Do I feel like I can turn this into a good painting? Is it inspiring to me? Did I fall in love with it, or now that I've put it on a thumbnail, I've thought, well, I don't know, maybe I'm not all that excited over it after all. And you know, you can pick and choose what you are selecting. With clouds, there's a lot that I leave out, and there's some that I add. It's really the more you paint them, the more you do them, you realize what you think works. And when I say what you think works, what is your voice, right? What is your style? This is your story, how you feel about the scene, not how anybody else feels about it. And I really push this with my students to really get in touch with, like, what is it that inspires me with that scene? Why is it that I want to share it? And what is the story behind it? Sometimes it's just a beautiful scene, all right, and you're inspired by it. But other times there can be some stories behind these things. So I just keep blocking them in. And you can see that's like a scattered cloud formation, but I actually like how that's coming along. I like what that looks like. All right. And then I can just like pick and choose, like, how busy do I want to get it? You know, like there are a lot of little stragglers, and these things are quite beautiful, actually. And there's nothing more fun than putting these in paint, too. I mean, to me, this is like the preliminary groundwork, right? This is homework. This is what I tell my students. This is homework. This is where you do the practice work and you figure the problems out. There's a slight cloud bank back here. I don't want it as dark as what I've got going up here. Do I want to suggest it? possibly can suggest it. Sometimes with pen and ink, it will look a little bit more like a mountain. So, you just have to decide what your choices are with that. Now, the sky is light, but I don't want to keep it just the white of the paper. So I'm going to use the lightest marker. Am I still on, you guys? Well, it looks like I'm still live. So this is the 20%. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and just knock back the white paper. I just want to have something up here to represent just a little bit more of value. And I'm going to keep it lighter at the horizon. And yes, you get these lines. I'm not a perfectionist at this, really. I'm just wanting to see what I feel about the scene and have fun doing this. Then where I start getting closer to the horizon, I'm barely hitting that and letting that go just a tad bit lighter, maybe a little dark under the clouds. Now, one thing you can do is you can come back and hit it a second time. So I do want to go ahead and suggest this cloud bank back here. And it very well might look like a mountain or something off in the distance. And I'm using the 20, but I'm pushing harder than I did in the sky. So I had a real light touch up here. Like I wasn't pushing very hard. I was skimming the top so that I don't go too dark with that. And it is kind of showing up on my screen. So hopefully you guys can see that. But I know you can see it probably darker here because I am pushing it a little bit darker so that this cloud bank is apparent. And then you can just decide, and play up. Is there any others? I'm going to jump back. I'm going to use the 40 again and maybe just barely give a little bit more of a punch to parts of this cloud. Maybe, there is reflected light, so it's lighter, but there are some areas where this cloud is darker. Now you're going to see in the photograph like sky holes. I don't always do all those sky holes. They can start getting your cloud to look pretty darn busy. So for me, sometimes those sky holes are just not, I'm going to change the shape right here. Those sky holes don't always do it for me. I'm just taking this guy just a little bit darker right up here. And I'm not pushing hard. I'm sort of just doing that little, the pen is turned sideways. I'm not straight on, sideways, and just sort of skimming the top of it. Again, it's going to lighten up a little bit because these dry a little bit lighter. And, and just looking at, maybe I'll just add a little bit more over here. Love this scattered cloud business. These are really fun to paint. So when you paint it, obviously with paint, you get to get this glow up underneath here. And then I'm going to go ahead and maybe just, I'm not sure when I did that sketch, my pen went a little bit crazy on me with that one line going across. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull in a few darks there. Now, do I want to put cactus? I can put some cactus in here, but one thing I've found with the brush tip, your cactus gets too fat. And I've had problems with that with the brush tip. So I'm gonna have a nice grouping of cactus. Let's not line up a bunch of soldiers. But let's think about what we're doing. And they're grouped nicely for me here already. So I'm going to try to replicate that as good as possible. So let me just drop a line here. See, they can even get a little bit too fat. Just have to, I'm gonna take this guy just a hair bit taller. I can keep him just a little bit more. Not bad. And then just, a grouping. And maybe there is a couple back over here, so if I can do them small enough. We'll fix this tree a little bit bigger. And just throwing in a few. And they do have a tendency, they got a little bit fat on the top for me. They do that. That's just part of sometimes working with markers, really just suggesting composition wise, where are they? And every time I try to make them a little bit thinner and go higher, it's a little bit better. And they'll lighten up a little bit as the hard to resist putting in the cacti. Well, yeah, because this is a desert scene, and again, just if you want to have more dimension to all this dark, you can. This is my black. You can get a little bit more dimension. There's not really much for me to do with the micron pins. Now there is a micron pin. That's these right here. I didn't do the cactus with them because they're too hard. Like these are really fine points and they are too hard. You can do some smaller stuff in different scenes with them, but they just are not the greatest. And I just kind of got rid of that road, and I'm just going to bring in some of this black and maybe just create a little bit more dimension up close here. And really, it's up to you. How far do you want to take it? What are you trying to say about your scene? Just working in those markers, and you can just use a little bit of black up close to kind of create a little more. I would probably not do much more to that sky. It's, the sunset. I know that we have this halo type thing, but when it comes to my pen and inks, I don't try to portray those in my grayscale. I'm just portraying a slight cloud bank back there. And then, the trees breaking the horizon line. So I would look at that and think, okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, yes, this photograph, there's some sky holes, and that's a lot thinner. I would probably paint it much thinner when I go to finish it as like a finished painting. But for markers, it's really about the big picture. For Notans, it's like about the big shapes. So that's kind of just, what you want to do. It's just practice. So the more you practice at this, the better you will get. There's just that whole idea that when you practice, makes, I don't know about perfect, but it does make it better. I'm going to try to, let me see if I can give you guys just a little bit better shot so you can kind of see as I talk about some of the stuff. You can see how the cactus got just a little bit fat on me right up top. The pen, the markers will do that, but I can't use the micro pen on it because it's too fine. All right. And then just keeping your pattern simple. I could have gotten a lot busier with these edges here. See all this little edge work, all that little foo-foo stuff? You're better off if you keep your line simple. You get a nicer finished looking sketch. All right, you guys, you know what I say. Practice. Get back to the easel. Ciao.